Have I got a deal for you? First, we start with one of the best driver's cars you and I have experienced over the past 4 years. Then we add, say, 39 extra horsepower. Then we change the construction of the vehicle, use a lot more exotic materials, and by doing so, lower the weight by about 55 pounds. Then, of course, we have to make it more fancy, perhaps some Alcantara on the inside, even paint the wheels gold. I don't know about that last part. The question is, would all of that be worth, to you, an extra $30,000? First things first, notice very little Tupperware covering what, believe it or not, is an attractive engine. This one, the S55, a 3-liter inline 6, that in this application is good for 444 horsepower, comes in at 6,250 RPM, and 406 pound-feet of torque, comes in at 2,350 RPM, stays flat all the way up to 5,500 RPM. Now, huge provision there. While the horsepower has changed, the torque is the same from the regular M2. That drives only the rear wheels, Santa Maria, Madre de Dios, thank you very much, through the choice of two different transmissions. There is a 6-speed manual that has some carbon fiber bits as part of its construction. And then there is a 7-speed dual clutch on offer. That's what this car has. Now, you can imagine with an engine with this much output in this kind of a vehicle, they do need to pay some attention to cooling. This car is no exception. It has not one but 3 radiators, the central radiator, which I am sitting on, and 2 additional radiators off to the side. The oil sump does change a bit for this application. There's not one but 2 scavenge pumps. That's mainly for track use. Then they go a step further and the car is fitted with the dual clutch transmission in the form of an additional transmission oil cooler. Sort of on the flip side of the cooling, the exhaust system changes. It's a dual branch design at the rear. That in turn turns into 2 tailpipes at each side of the vehicle, and yes, there are adjustable baffles. Then there's the fuel economy. Do we really need to discuss it with this car? 17, 24, 20 combined. The car is fitted with the dual clutch transmission. All of those numbers go down by 1. Then the performance figures, what this car is all about. 0 to 60 in a manual transmission car, 4 seconds. 0 to 60 in this car, believe it or not, 3.8 seconds. VMAX, 174 miles an hour. Admittedly, you and I have become accustomed to rather porky BMWs. This does not fall into that category. 3,600 pounds, or depending on how you express your weights and measures, 1,633 kilograms. Now, I do feel it prudent to point out that is almost 1,000 pounds lighter than the M5 competition we tested on the same road, and that transmission accounts for 55 pounds of the 3,600 pounds with that. Oh, yes. Oh, yes! Wow, it absolutely stood on its ass end there. The tires broke free a little bit. The engine switches on about 2,500 RPM and pulls like a freight train all the way up to 6,000 RPM. That is not the usual characteristic of an inline 6. That is more like a very high-strung 4-cylinder, like in those AMGs, but God, it is good here. As a PS, that engine note is not only glorious, it is unlike other BMWs. It's more mechanical, it's more raw in nature, and can I say, thank you, sir, may I have another? So that transmission, yes, a departure for all BMWs, even a departure for M cars. But here it changes the personality of the car, makes it a bit more aggressive. I've shared with you that I do like the torque converter 8-speed that we get in many BMW M cars as of late. This one, it's harsher shifting, which I prefer in this personality of a vehicle. To me, it encourages me to change the gears manually. Like even in town, I want to change the gears manually. Now let's be clear about this. The shifts themselves and the speed of the shifts are not as electric as in a PDK, and I will admit that the 8-speed torque converter, that is a bit better at picking the gears when it's driving automatically, more so in town than out in places like this, which proves the point that I now understand very clear. This is a very well matched transmission to this engine. It wouldn't be a very clear decision, oh, I'm gonna go with a manual and call it a day. One would have to drive both before committing to something that A, costs an additional $3,000, and B, I would argue much more important, changes the personality of the vehicle. Like the engine, there are some minor tweaks to the underpinnings. Let's start with the rear suspension. There it's the same 5-link unit we saw in the M2, but they changed the construction of it. The control arms and the wheel hubs are aluminum. Then they changed the way they attach the rear subframe to the car. In the CS, they do not use rubber bushings. They attach the subframe directly to the vehicle. The logic being makes the vehicle a bit stiffer. Now, while we're still back there, let's discuss the differential. BMW calls it the M Sport differential. If you were to read a description on it, sounds awfully familiar to an electronic limited slip differential, with the exception of the speed in which they're transferring torque from side to side is crazy fast, to the point where I would call this a limited slip differential on steroids. Then there are the dampers, which are adjustable to 3 different modes, which brings us to the brakes. Up front, the rotors are 400 millimeters in diameter with 6 piston calipers. In the rear, 380 millimeters in diameter with 4 piston calipers. Now, there is one side note with that. The car you are looking at is fitted with the carbon ceramic rotors, and I believe they are the same diameter all the way around. And yes, they do provide a bit more stopping power, but in keeping with the theme of the CS, they are supposedly lighter weight. Yeah, it's sharper, it has higher limits of adhesion, but it's more than that. It's a better package. You feel the stronger structure, all the stuff we just discussed. God, this thing is so beautiful. One can toss this thing around corners with some confidence. I would go so far as to saying it's the best thing this side of a mid-engine car, and that's because of the weight. And yes, the BMW engineers, but really the fact that they've taken all the know-how from M5s and M3s and all that kind of stuff in the past and put it into a lighter, shorter vehicle with a shorter wheelbase and making sure it stays under 4,000 pounds. I know that's crazy to say, makes this thing work incredibly well. The control over the pitch is absolutely fantastic. I cannot tell you there is one instance where I've felt any squat or dive, even as I push it really hard around these turns and I try to disturb the plane of motion. Yeah, I can feel a bit of the stability control trying to slow things down, but not anything with the weight going in the wrong direction. It's magnificent. So the engine and the underpinnings, least of the changes to this thing. The CS is all about the construction. Specifically, a number of the body panels are now made of carbon fiber reinforced polymer. There's smaller bits like the splitter in the front, the rear diffuser, and the mirrors, but then there's bigger parts like the roof and the hood, all carbon fiber reinforced polymer. Then to go along with that, the length of the console on the inside of the car is also carbon fiber, and then not specific to the CS, but something I still have to point out, the bracing underneath the hood is carbon fiber. Now, of course, if you're going to make a significant percentage of the exterior out of frankincense and myrrh, it would only stand to reason to make the interior a bit more fancy as well. There they've enlisted the help of a lot of Alcantara, specifically on the dashboard, the steering wheel, portions of the seat, and the armrest. Now, if you are Munich and you want to extract the most money out of hardcore drivers, then you would have to make the spoiler out of carbon fiber reinforced polymer as well. Now, a huge note about the weight delta in all these parts. Most of it, it's not a big difference. Where the big difference lies is the hood. By switching from steel to carbon fiber reinforced polymer, it halves the weight of the hood alone. Admittedly, the ride quality, not what the M5 was, but then again, you didn't expect that. Something else you didn't expect, that carbon fiber roof we just discussed, there are no structural items in the roof. The carbon fiber panel is the structural item. That means there's also no insulation. So everything you are hearing right now is through one carbon fiber panel that is the roof. I can't honestly tell you this car is significantly louder than other BMWs you and I have driven. Yeah, I hear the engine a bit more, but it's definitely coming from there, not from there. I have to say, this is kind of a neat party trick, to the point where I'd almost forego the sunroof. Yes, it is indeed that time again to play your favorite game of mine, the options game, with today's contestant, something that is incredibly special. And no, not just because it's an M2, let's dive right in to understand. The 2020 BMW M2 CS for a base price of built-in $83,600. Now, you are probably scratching your head thinking, wait a minute, aren't those things like under 60 grand in base price? What the hell are they charging so much for? Well, a couple of things. All the stuff we already discussed in terms of the equipment, but most importantly, this is a 1-year only car, and while they're not saying a specific number, it is a limited production car. I did press some people at BMW North America, and the only thing I could get out of them was they have set aside a couple of hundred for the US. Couple of hundred. So to give you an idea, that's like RS6 territory, where they only make about 500 of those a year. I'm guessing it's probably the same here, especially when you consider an $83,600 base price. But anyway, let's press on to the color, and this is stunning. Misano blue. But here's the catch. There are only 4 colors on offer: white, black, silver, and this stunning blue. I think the only choice is the blue, and then the only choice of the interior is black leather. I mean, come on, you're charging me $83 large. At least give me the common courtesy to pick my own interior color. And you know what? If you want to force me to go through BMW individual and pay extra money to do so, I can do it, because I'm dropping 83 grand on a BMW M2. And oh, by the way, that color is an additional $550. Then we add the 19-inch gold wheels. Thankfully, these are no charge. Now, I will admit the gold wheels do look kind of cool with the blue, but I'm not a gold wheel fan, so hopefully there's a different option there. Then there is the 7-speed dual clutch transmission, $2,900, which is the same price if this were a regular M2. And then the carbon ceramic rotors, the M Sport they call them, $8,500. Then the destination and handling von Leipzig, Deutschland, $995, which brings us to the full retail price of, yes, a limited production vehicle, $96,545. I really hate to let my Lotus nerd and history slip out, but I gotta get back to that weight, this time with the brakes. Yes, this car is equipped with the almost $9,000 brakes, and they are magnificent. The pedal modulation, yes, very good, but you expected that from a BMW M car. What you didn't expect is this much stopping power. Does one need it in the lighter M2? I don't think so. A quick provision about that last note. God, this thing is so good. It all depends on what the purpose of the vehicle is. Like, for example, if it's for use around town and thus by association, canyon roads like this or mountain roads, then spending $9 grand on brakes, probably not the most prudent use of the money, especially considering the weight of the vehicle. But if one were using it around a track, then yeah, you probably do want the extra stopping power. Yes, it is incredibly expensive, but it is by far the best BMW makes, which means we have to press on to the wish list because I got nothing else to add to that. And even in the wish list, I don't think I have anything to add there, because you can get one, granted not a CS, a regular M2 with a sunroof, and you can get the CS with the manual transmission, and you don't have to have the gold wheels, which means if I was really digging here, I'd say, hey, with a DCT, can you add an 8th gear? Because there are some times when you're switching the gear and you feel a little flat-footed because some of the gears are too far spaced apart. That's all I got. So I'm gonna turn this around to you guys. Feel free to opine in the comments below, and no, you can't bitch about the price, but you can add to the wish list. And here's why you can't bitch about the price. I do not think the resale will be bad on this thing. On one end of the spectrum, it could be better than most M cars because it's a limited production vehicle and we don't know how many of them they're going to make. Or on the other end of the spectrum, it could be as good as the 1M. Now, that's a bit ambitious, but I'm thinking it's somewhere in between, which means you will probably keep that premium. And that's all I got because this thing was incredible and I'm going to cry like a baby when they take it from me. And oh, a little bit behind the scenes, this kind of helped me out because I got this car the day they took the C8 convertible from me, and that I was going to cry like a baby, but this kind of cushioned the blow. So until I see you in the next episode, bis später.